Now, leading our presentation today, we have our co-founder and CEO, Vivek Joshi. Vivek's been in the industrial OEM space for over 30 years, covering a wide range of verticals, and he's really passionate about helping OEMs transform their install base approach. And joining Vivek will be our Chief Growth Officer, Rob Bradenham. Rob has decades of experience working with industrial OEMs and providing consultation for them. And currently, as our Chief Growth Officer, he works across our customers' organizations to really help drive that transformation within their install base. Now, without further ado, I will hand it over to you, Rob.
Thanks, Aaron. So everybody here today, is coming from either an OEM or working with OEMs, and is really kind of faced with this challenge around their install base. Your install base is large, diverse, and complex, and you have a problem, a coverage problem with your install base. And like most OEMs, you haven't found something that's readily available off the shelf to address these challenges. And so you're really kind of faced with a build versus buy decision in terms of how do you solve the data challenges presented by your install base. That's really what we're going to talk about today. So quick overview of the agenda we're going to follow for the next 45 minutes. We're going to talk a little bit about some build success stories, and then we're going to also go into why that doesn't always work. And so we'll illustrate a less successful journey to protect the innocent using Paul. And then we're going to talk about why is building an install-based technology solution so hard, and kind of wrap it all up with the elements of a build versus buy framework for technology and a better way in dealing with your install base. So before we jump in, we're going to do a quick poll. So if you guys can just take a couple seconds here, and this is multiple choice. So it's how many of you do different things in your company, right? So operate a foundry, design and manufacture your own machine or production tools, actually constructed and manage the construction of your own factory, design, developed, and maintain your own ERP software, or don't do any of these yourselves. Give everybody another few seconds, and then we'll move on, and we'll bring up the poll results later on in the discussion. Okay, I'll keep going. I'll leave the poll open as we get started. So I'm going to start with build versus buy. This decision sometimes seems simple. There are a lot of famous examples of companies who have successfully built software that has been really critical to their business. So first, an example, Penske Truck Rental. They rent hundreds of thousands of vehicles. They are essentially a marketplace where they, buy trucks from manufacturers, bring together a bunch of people who need trucks and connect them. And so they were building an app to connect their customers with their trucks and realized that this was the critical piece of their customer experience. And so they built their own app that was unique to them. The second, an example is McDonald's. They built their own point of sale system. So they've got 2 million associates across their owned and franchise stores, and they really needed full control because that was the key interface between their associates and their customers and their production. And this control enabled them to innovate faster with things like self-service kiosks. Another example, EA Sports. They are great at building software. What they build is video games. And so they also built their own proprietary gaming engine, which both accelerated their game development, and as they acquired other game developers, made it easier for them to integrate those game developers into their overall process. Another example most people are familiar with now, Uber. And so Uber has tremendous scale to take advantage of. And so when they were looking at how do they connect drivers and passengers, there really weren't commercial solutions that could meet the needs of their literally millions of drivers and customers. And so they built their own user support platform. And then, of course, you have unlimited time and budget, right? So Google, right, flush with cash and tons of resources from the success of their search business, recognized an opportunity in terms of mobile operating systems. And so they developed Android, despite not being a major player in either phones or any sort of phone software. But they considered this a major strategic opportunity and had the resources to go do it. So what do Google, McDonald's, Uber, Penske, EA Sports all have in common, right? They don't build their own machines. They were really focused on building technology that was, a critical core competence of their business. So now I'm going to hand it over to Vivek, who's going to talk about the story of Paul, aka Pablo.
Rob, thank you very much for that. I appreciate the introduction in terms of what you've been sharing with us, the success stories, right? But for every success story, as you can imagine, there's not so successful stories. And to protect the identity and innocence, we decided to have some fun with this example. We decided to go grab a favorite character, Pablo, aka Paul, depending on how you want to call this person. It's actually a story that is really the moral of the story is about the journey that somebody like a OEM goes through, like one of the personas that we work with goes through in terms of making a build decision versus a buy decision. So with that in mind, I want to kind of share a little bit of this story, right? So Paul was an aftermarket leader. He was a VP of aftermarket in a large company. By the way, these are real examples. We just identified this guy's the identity of this customer. Pretty substantial business, $1 billion industrial OEM, about $100 million business. So it's nice aftermarket business, right? Making a ton of money, as you can imagine. The aftermarket is pretty rich margins, and Paul was living it. He thought that there's a chance to keep making a career out of it, rising to the ranks, making a phenomenal career, being successful out there. And as he was cruising through, he was tapped on the shoulder to lead this big initiative, right? And the big initiative was like, hey, listen, we really want to go after the install base. $100 million business, while it's nice, it could be much bigger. You know what? You're the chosen one, right? You're the one who's going to be tapped to go on this. So off he goes. He was asked to go build his business. Much like what we see time and time again with many of our customers, he was given a task. He was given a goal. And more importantly, up and down the chain, all the way to the board level, commitments were made, right? And as we see time and time again, this is not a solo effort. So Pablo was the leader of a cross-functional team. He was given a bunch of people. He was given a budget. He was asked to go get this thing done. But what's so hard about it? Data. We can put it together, right? We have a data warehouse. We have a BI tool. We can put things together. Get in there, get done, get this system put together, get analytics built, and off we go, right? He was feeling really good about himself. And of course, here we are, 3 years later, millions of dollars being spent, projects not completed yet, 4x the budget overruns, right? Not happening, right? And you wind up sitting in this place where you go and figure out what's going on. And then you realize that what looks easy from the outside, as I always say to people, it's easier said than done. The opportunity to go build something that's not core to you, the opportunity to go build something that you're not used to building is really problematic, right? So if this is not a core competency to you, why are you going to go build it? If you don't need full control of this IP, if you don't need full control of this technology, why go build it, right? So there's a series of choices that Paul, aka Pablo, made that fundamentally led him and his company down the wrong direction. And when we start looking at these considerations, these 6 things are ones we see time and time again as the ones to think about. And I want to make sure I leave this message with you that check out these boxes, make sure you understand why you're making the decision, and then go for it. So with that, I'm going to hand off back to Rob to kind of share some of the more specific findings as to why this is so hard. With that, Rob, back to you.
Thanks, Vivek. So yeah, why is building an install-based solution so hard? The first is really the complexity of the data and the workflows that need to be executed on this. So on the left side of this, you've got all your customers, their locations, their different stakeholders, different needs of headquarters versus local facilities. On the right side of this, you have all the legacy systems and data silos. You have transactional data in your ERP system. You have customer data in your CRM. You might even have implemented e-commerce. You now have some data from an IoT solution. You have sales and marketing and service all operating in their own worlds. And then you take into account that you probably have grown through acquisition at some point, right? So each of these things now get multiplied by 2, 3, 4, 5, and the complexity continues to grow. And in the middle, none of the equipment that you're building is getting any simpler. Your customers have demands. The equipment is getting more complex. It's getting more application specific. It takes more knowledge to service, diagnose, and repair that equipment. And so this is really exacerbated by the fact that there's such a wide range of people who have such a wide range of use cases, all of which that needs to leverage this install-based data, right? So as a business or sales leader, I need to be able to direct my sales team. I need to be able to understand my customers. Where is my wallet share? Which ones are loyal? How am I enabling my channel partners? On the front line, I need to be able to respond to inbound inquiries. I need to be able to identify items that might be missing from a quote, prioritize who to engage. And then as a market leader, I have my own use cases I need to solve for. As a service technician, I have a whole nother set of use cases that I need to solve for. And so really this magnifies that complexity between the workflows and the different use cases that different people in your organization need to solve. And so this is kind of bringing it all together in terms of the different approaches that have been tried historically. Different organizations have implemented BI tools, which of course you have data quality issues, you have setup time, you have getting data from all these different sources on the left, and then how much of your team actually is really capable and adept at using a BI tool. You have CRM reports, which of course typically have some of the data from some of the systems for some of the customers regarding some of your products, but become difficult to sustain. Some larger companies have tried to build their own tools. Typically, something gets mandated, an initial version gets built, it doesn't solve all the use cases. The company is thinking less like a software company and more like a manufacturing company. And so the resources to sustain and evolve that and future-proof that solution over time aren't there. And then, of course, spreadsheets, right, which are out of date the minute that you build them. So you have data as a mess, manual workflows, many of these things requiring analysts, which are difficult to scale. And then, of course, the graveyard of abandoned tools that were built but never evolved and maintained. So, if you look at building and building your own technology and just IT projects in general, I mean, there's a lot of risk. Research by different consulting firms shows that almost half of large IT projects end in complete or partial failure. Budgets are typically overrun by 45%, and over half of projects deliver less value than promised, right? So there's risk on timeline, completion, budget, and the ROI. So, when you're looking at your install base, right, there's really, 3 big sets of capabilities or expertise that you need to be world-class at in order to be successful. So starting at the bottom of this, you need to be able to bring together the data from all of those different data silos and legacy systems, and then not just bring it together, but deal with the data quality issues that exist in every manufacturer and bring that together and solve that. The second piece is you need the analytics, both to understand what's going on now and start to predict and anticipate what your future customer needs are. So you need data science expertise. You need availability of training data. You need to understand artificial intelligence and machine learning. And then the last piece, applications, right? So you need people who can build enterprise-grade software applications that can be used by, potentially thousands of users simultaneously. UI and UX experts, so you build something that people want to use. And then, everything being built today is in the cloud, right? So having that cloud expertise to be able to successfully deploy and redeploy upgrades, on a periodic basis. I'm going to hand it back over to Vivek to talk about a better way to handle install base.
Thank you, Rob. I think in terms of the way we think about this problem, right, the notion of an install-based data platform is obviously the way we think about the buy piece of it. You can assemble the components like Rob showed at the previous page, or really you can buy a single system that we call an install-based data platform. The notion of an install-based platform really brings together all these things that you see in the context of the description. But more importantly, from the perspective of what Rob pointed out, you're taking multiple risks with building your own technology, right? You're taking the timeline risk that you see out here. It could be many-year journey. We've literally seen situations where customers have come back to us 2, 3, 4 years after they tried to do something on their own, and then say, you know what, we give up. This is not a core competence. You're going to do it. We're not going to do it anymore. Or you can get the upside of a shortened timeline with an application expert like us who comes in and gets this thing done, right? So I literally look at this as a risk reduction way to go get a proven solution in place as fast as you can. With that in mind, what we've seen is many companies obviously feel the same about the buy decision. We've got some fantastic customers that you see listed out here who have been deploying the solution successfully for many years now. And I think the point is that they made the choice to go reduce the risk and get the benefits faster than not otherwise. With that in mind, the opportunity for you to go back and make a build versus buy decision really comes back down to these same 6 considerations I pointed earlier, right? Think about the core competence piece of it. Think of the control, especially the IP, intellectual property piece of it. Figure out whether you truly have the software development capabilities inside your team, or your scale is large enough, like we see some large companies like GE and ABB and others who actually built it. They have the scale to deploy this on their own. And then really the point about what's your opportunity cost in deploying your software and subject matter experts into other higher value items that you could control and benefit from than doing a non-core competency. That's kind of a quick update. We're putting out a small build versus buy buyer's guide, if you may, coming out soon. You'll have this available on our website probably in the next few days. We'll have more details on that in the emails you'll get after this webinar is over as well. I think with that, that's the end of the webinar for today. Aaron and DJ, we're open for questions now.
Yeah, so we have a few trickling in right now. One person wants to know, what about using our CRM? It has much of this functionality, and we can use the asset object to track our installed base.
That's a great question. We get that very commonly, right? The CRM is now becoming almost like a de facto platform with virtually every company that we work with. And while the asset object is actually a beneficial way to do it, the fact of the matter is the user experience, the user interface, and the functionality is not as good as people would like to see in a more modern system. And so while you can use the object to go synchronize the data, it actually never hurts to actually have a more specific purpose-built system that takes you into the process the way it should for an install-based solution.
Yeah, I think one thing I would add on to that, I think, the asset object, I think, has worked well for many in terms of where is the equipment. I think where it starts to require either a lot of customization or just doesn't meet the needs is then bringing in all the different dimensions of that equipment, all the transactions that have occurred, all of the other interactions around that piece of equipment, and then being able to apply the purpose-built analytics to it.
Great. And there's a few more questions in here. What are the typical challenges you face during implementation?
I'll start. I'll take the beginning of the question in terms of what are the challenges. So I think there's one common theme in the challenges is data quality is a big deal, and the lack of understanding of what it takes to make data good. The single biggest hurdle is that piece that we've seen over time, and I think people underestimate the effort required. We've seen master data management projects that drag out for years because people see, oh, how hard is it to go clean up data? How hard is it to organize data? And we go through it, and a couple of years later, they're still not organized data. The governance is out of shape. The management is out of shape in terms of the master data. And I think that's probably the biggest hurdle in getting any data platform up and running. Rob, I don't know if you have any other hurdles that you can think of, but I think the data piece of it is the single biggest one that I've seen so far.
Yeah, I think data from different systems, how do you join them together? The ERP and the CRM almost never have the same account numbers, right? So it's not as easy as just matching them up that way. And then when you layer on, acquisition A, B, and C, and the fact that those definitely don't have the same customer information, yet there is overlap, and you do want to see that entire customer interaction, that's definitely something that takes a lot of companies, especially when you go down the build it themselves path, years and years, and we end up revisiting those discussions, down the road.
One thing that just occurred to me, DJ, we didn't see the results of the survey. Did we? Poll survey. Do you want to pop that up if you don't mind?
Interesting. So we do have a few people that operate their own foundry. We got a few that design and manufacture their own machine tools. One that actually manages the construction of their own factory. A couple that have designed, developed, and maintained their own ERP. And then 70% of the responses said we do none of the above things ourselves, which I think is, interesting and I think reflects, our understanding of the industry too. You're already using outsourced partners, whether that be for raw materials, for parts and components, and for, other potentially non-core aspects of your business.
I think what's fascinating to me when I look at this survey results is that 70% don't go build out some of these capabilities themselves, but 30% do, some form or the other. And actually, that's not dissimilar to some of the data we see or our own experiences in terms of how many people we've seen kind of quote unquote try to build their own. I think the bigger question is, yes, you may try to build your own foundry. Yes, you may try to build your own machine tools. The question is, how does it end, right? As the famous Twitter meme goes, how it started, how it's going, right? The question is, if you started building your own foundry, how's it going right now? Is always a question I have. We had an interesting comment in the chat box from one of our attendees today about his own experience. I don't know if we can turn on a mic for one of the attendees. DJ, I don't know if you can do that for Barry. I think he had a comment about his experience of build versus buy. So I don't know if there's a way to turn on the mic, DJ.
Yeah, the mic's turned on, Vivek.
Okay, there you go.
Hi.
Okay.
Yeah. Thanks for turning on the microphone. I don't know how wide your audience is, but I work for a company that has tried both methods, and I must admit the accelerated program with the Entytle team was far easier and far better. We set out on the journey to develop our own program. We've actually recently recruited people that have developed their own installed base programs and have shared their experiences with us, and are really delighted with what they've seen when they've joined our company. We're still on the journey, and we're still moving forward. But I think the biggest advantage that you get in working with a company such as Entytle, and I don't know any other companies that are the competition, and I'm not being paid for this endorsement, but I think the biggest thing that you benefit from is the experience. I've worked with the data team of Entytle. I've worked with the customer support management team and benefited hugely from their experience in terms of helping to steer us through a lot of problems. I work for a corporation that has a number of independent businesses, and the Entytle platform now is one of the common shared platforms across the business, and it's seen as actually moving our business forward.
Barry, thank you so much for that. As Barry said, he is not a paid endorser. Barry's just a happy customer and happy fan. I'm so glad that he did that. And I think, Barry, the comment you made about experience is really critical, right? And what I would say to you in response to that particular comment, not just Barry, but all the people attending the call today, is your IT team may get a quote unquote at bat, as you say in the US, maybe once every 5 or 6 years to go do something like this, if they're lucky. We do this every day. We do this daily, weekly, monthly, annually, multiple times, right? And so we've had a lot more experience, as Barry put it, a lot more at-bats, so knowing what mistakes happen and how to avoid them, how to mitigate risk. And more importantly, because we've seen this, we know all the hidden landmines that may derail a project. And one of the first questions was, what are the big hurdles? Data quality, for example. And I think in Barry's case, I'm not going to give any, obviously, customer-related secrets, but, the extraordinary amount of data that poured in from all these different independent systems that Barry talked about, the quality, the reconciliation of all that information was very, very difficult. And Barry's chief information officer was very, very realistic, very aware of that right from day one. And that was one of the biggest questions, like, hey, can you help us handle this mess? And I think that alone was a part of the value prop, I think, that helped get them over that. So, there's many things out there which I think are beneficial, and Barry really highlighted the message. So thank you very much for that, Barry. Appreciate it. Any other questions, Aaron?
Yeah, there was actually one around comparisons of build versus buy efforts, but I think Barry kind of knocked that one out of the park. So a couple more questions I see. Someone says they have several different ERP tools in-house. What are the typical ERP tools that Entytle integrates with?
So I'll start the answer and give some statistics. So we've had experience with, I think, like 27 or 30 different types of ERP systems in the back end. And these are everything from what you see in the large companies like SAP and Oracle, all the way to Sightline and Epicor, and even smaller systems that we've never heard of, most people don't hear of, right? So we've got extraordinary breadth of experience with all these different systems. And the good part about these systems is they all have very similar architecture. So they all have this thing called relational database, which is a very technical term. But because they all have relational database, bringing data out of the system and integrating to them to pull the data out is actually not that hard. They're well-established methods and procedures to do that. So it's actually pretty straightforward. And again, the experience we've had with, over the years with a variety of different systems gives us comfort and confidence that we can do that. Hopefully that answers the question, Aaron.
That's great. And then I see one more right now. How does this differ from our BI tool on hand? It sounds like it really takes in a lot of the similar data and maybe some of the same functionalities.
That's a great question. So the way I think about BI is a retrospective explaining what happened kind of analysis. And what we've built in Entytle is taking that similar data store, but apply two things to it, which typical BI and data warehouses don't have. First and foremost, the whole notion of data quality, right? BI tools just simply don't embed data quality in there, which means reconciling data, cleansing it, deduplicating, enriching it, that simply doesn't exist. So that's one base technology that we built that doesn't happen today. That's point number one. Point number two, the other thing we built is predictive algorithms that don't happen to reside as native algorithms, if you may, inside a BI tool. Somebody's got to go do something with it and then feed that back and then make it actionable, right? So automating this entire dirty data to insights to action capability is something that doesn't exist in a BI tool and will never exist in a BI tool, honestly, which is kind of why we built Entytle, right? So it's that capability of soup to nuts, if you may, dirty data to actionable insights is what doesn't happen today. Hopefully that answers the question.
I would just add on a little bit more of kind of the purpose-built aspect, right? So with the install base, right, it's not just the asset, it's not just the parts transactions, it's not just the service transactions, it's also the service contract, it's also the bill of materials, it's also the recommended spare parts list, it's also the maintenance plan. And so having an already existing data model that links every different dimension of the install base all together, combining that with the purpose-built analytics, and then also being able to translate that directly into a pipeline or a set of opportunities, right? So taking the insights and making them actionable. Those are things that they're definitely not an out-of-the-box BI tools. You quickly are heading down the build path once you start to customize enough to get to that level of purpose built.
Great. And this one kind of goes on hand with some of the tools we're talking about, but does Entytle currently work with on-premise solutions, and where is our tool hosted at?
Great question. So Entytle today does not, well, is strictly a cloud-based SaaS, software as a service. It is hosted on Amazon Web Services, though we are building out interoperability, as we call it, a hybrid cloud, to go to a Azure instance as well. But core is Amazon Web Services, and we don't do on-prem.
But we do consume data from on-prem systems, right? So if somebody has an on-prem CRM or some other database that's been established, we can consume that data into the cloud, and we do that, on a fairly regular basis.
That's right. Yeah.
Great. I don't have any more questions in front of me. We can maybe wait a few more seconds to wrap it up here, gentlemen, while maybe a few more questions roll in. But right now, there's no more to be asked.
I think from my perspective, build versus buy is an age-old question every single company deals with, right? We've all dealt with it. We deal with the build versus buy in the context of spreadsheets versus something else. It's a complication that really becomes more severe the larger the system, the larger the scale of deployment, and more importantly, the further away you are from your core competence. So I think, to me, that's really the main message of this thing. Clearly, we're biased for the buy side. That's our job. But we've seen enough failures, aka Narcos, aka Paulo, aka Pablo, to basically say, listen, this is hard stuff, right? Don't get fooled into thinking it's just simply data, it's just simple analysis, I can do it. It's very complicated. So that's the parting message for you guys. So Aaron, if there's no other questions, I think we should wrap it up. So from us to you, everybody, thank you very much for participating. Those in the US, have a safe, happy, healthy Thanksgiving next week, and those outside the US, have a great rest of the week and weekend. So thank you very much for participating tonight, and good night. Bye-bye.